Today, I have a very special guest, someone that's been on the show many times that I enjoy going through big news stories with. Libby Emmons, thank you so much for joining me again.
Sure thing.
So, last time you and I were on was election night when Donald J. Trump won. Just quickly, what was your reaction when you saw him become president?
I was pretty excited by it. I think that the country was ready for some positivity, and that's something that Trump always brings is a lot of optimism for the country and for Americans. And I think a lot of us are just tired of being told that we're awful, that our country sucks, that everything that we're founded on is terrible. So that was exciting. I'm excited about border security, honestly. I'm excited about some good economic revitalization, bringing some manufacturing home. I think there's a lot to be excited about in the new administration.
Yeah, I agree. I want to jump into this new bombshell story that the FBI did, in fact, have informants in the crowd on January 6th, something us conspiracy theorists have been believing for 3.5 years. This is a little bit long, but let me just read word for word what Representative Jim Jordan said. He said, "This confidential human source is a fancy name for a spy. So there were 26 spies there on January 6th. 17 of them were in restricted space. 4 of them went into the Capitol. 3 were deployed by the FBI, tasked to be there by the FBI. And then 2 of them were actually paid by the FBI. But 0 were prosecuted for doing the same thing, going in restricted space, going into the Capitol that American citizens got prosecuted for." So that's the part that's so troubling, this double standard, this unequal application of the law. What was your reaction when you saw that story break?
Yeah, very similar to Congressman Jordan's reaction. We have been told for a while that there were no FBI people on the ground, that it was very limited and all of this. And it turns out that the FBI had asked 3 of their, what is it, CHS, confidential human sources, to be there. Of those 3, one of them went into the Capitol, 2 of them were on the restricted grounds. Then there were another 23 who showed up, the FBI says of their own volition, but who are FBI informants. And those, like there were 11 of them or something that were on restricted grounds, and then others who went into the Capitol. So it's pretty disturbing. And the fact that none of them were prosecuted is, I think, what is the most telling, because some, 1,500 people or something like that were arrested. There's been arrests even just made recently. There's been arrests made all summer, people arrested for trespassing on Capitol grounds. And now we have a situation where, well, these 26 people, they weren't prosecuted at all. I don't know if they were even questioned. They were just allowed to do as they please. And I think that this could be a basis, definitely, when Trump goes about pardoning some of the J6ers, because none of this was ever revealed. This was not made clear to any defense attorneys that this is what was going on that day, or that there were people who were not prosecuted who were invited there by the FBI. So, yeah, I think that that should be part of the pardon. I think that should be made clear. And we have to remember, too, that there's still people in jail who are awaiting their trial, who were not given any bail. And that's something that people have been in jail for a long time waiting for their trials. So I think that it's a pretty good basis to get those pardons issued.
Yeah. I remember watching congressional testimony where FBI Director Christopher Wray said multiple times, hey, of course there were no FBI people there. There's been over 1,000 lawsuits brought by the government. That would have been brought up in those lawsuits. Well, not if you were hiding the information. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember covering on my show that Michael Horowitz said, the report on J6 has been done for a while, but now it has to go through security clearance. It won't come out until after the election. Well, I don't think they wanted it to come out before the election, because it would have definitely led to a landslide victory for Donald Trump, which he already got. But so now you have this new information that there were FBI people and they were breaking the law the same way that other people supposedly were. And you also have the president of the United States pardoning for 11 years anything Hunter Biden has done, right in the middle of his criminal trials, where they're all pointing to the fact that this guy is guilty as sin. Do you think that also weighs in on Trump's ability to forgive the J6 people?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Trump has the presidential authority to pardon and commute sentences for J6ers, regardless of what Biden did or didn't do. But Biden has been playing fast and loose with the pardons and commutations just in the past few days, not just his son, but also he's released a Chinese national who was found to be in possession of 47,000 images of child exploitation, which is absolutely horrifying. He commuted the sentence of a Pennsylvania judge who was found guilty of taking kickbacks to put children in prison, kids and teens, to put them in prison. One of the people that one of the young men that he sentenced to prison, and he got kickbacks from the prisons for doing this, killed himself in prison. So we've seen him pardon some pretty horrible people. We don't even know what it is that he thinks that his son Hunter did during that period of time, although we can make some guesses. But I don't think that, I think Trump can do what he wants with his pardon power anyway.
Yeah. I mean, former President Bill Clinton said, nobody should weigh in on the pardoning. It's a sacred thing that the president gets to make his own decisions about. Because I think they were pressuring him, are you going to ask for Hillary to have a pardon, even though she's not been charged with a crime? Are you going to have Dr. Fauci get a pardon, even though he hasn't been, convicted of a crime? It'll be really interesting to see if that all happens within the first week. I think it has weighed heavily on President Trump, especially you see like, these horrible stories of people being in solitary confinement for a year, beaten. They're not allowed to pray. They're not allowed to sing the national anthem. I mean, I had Jacob Chansley, the guy with the horns.
Right.
I had him on my show, and I said, you were in solitary confinement for 11 months. He interrupted me, 11 and a half. I was, oh, sorry.
Right. He knows exactly.
Get the story right. It was 11 and a half that the government betrayed me and took away my rights. And so anyway, pretty
even
wild.
have Benny Thompson, who chaired the January 6th committee, saying that he would accept a pardon. And it's like, really? Because did you do something there, Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, I thought that story of you guys destroying evidence was just internet hearsay.
Right. What was that?
Yeah. They want one for Liz Cheney. They want one for Hillary Clinton. It's like, okay.
Adam Kinzinger, Adam Schiff. Yeah. All of these people who apparently did nothing wrong when they sought to prosecute the president and waste all of our money and time. Yeah.
Speaking of that, I know the Post Millennial monitored and covered all of the lawfare against President Trump. Now he's been named Person of the Year by Time Magazine, a very left-leaning owned magazine. And now he's got people, big names on Wall Street cozying up to him. He's got CEOs coming out of the woodwork saying how optimistic they are for the United States. How did we go from him being this awful person that then got compared to Hitler to now being the cover of one of the most well-known magazines in the entire world?
Well, it is his second time as Person of the Year. He was also Person of the Year back in 2016 when he won his first election. But this is a direct result of the American people telling mainstream media and the powers that be and Democrats and anybody else who will listen, what's up? The Americans came out, they said, Trump is going to be our guy. We're going to give him a chance. And you notice that even in the wake of the election, there has not been the kind of resistance 2.0 that one might have expected from this win. A lot of people are just saying, let's give him space. Let's give him some runway. Let's see what he's going to do with it. He's got a really high approval rating right now. He hasn't taken office yet, so, it's mitigated by that. But people are ready to give him a shot and see what's going to happen and see what he's capable of doing. You even see that in the Senate, where some of his Senate confirmations, some of his nominations for confirmation hearings to go forward, you've seen senators, coming back and saying that they would be on board to help these nominees get through. And that's a big thing too, so I think that that is what the Time magazine cover has to do with. There's no one else who has been fighting as hard for the country in the past year. Not the president, not the vice president. Trump has really been the one out there giving people hope, giving people optimism, and also explaining in detail what his plans are for a second term, second administration. And he's been clear about that. He's not coming into office with vague notions and, various, things that we can't comprehend. He's coming into office with detailed plans. He's got Doge, he's got the border security, he's got detailed plans about economics and trade and manufacturing. He's got plans about energy. He's planning to bring back the XL Keystone pipeline to bring, oil from Canada into the refineries in the US. He's got real concrete plans that Americans can look at and say, okay, you made us these promises, we're going to hold you to them. And why don't you go ahead and get started? And I think that the Time cover is recognition of that.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I'm trying to remember the name of the owner of Time magazine. He's a very left-leaning Democrat, and he was so angry at Kamala Harris for not doing an interview with his magazine that one of his covers was literally just bashing her.
That's right.
for being a scared person that wouldn't even do an interview. And no wonder you're going to lose this election. Meanwhile, Trump, he was going into CNN. He was going into ABC News, MSNBC, like places that you would not normally expect. And then on top of that, he does an overtime shift making fries at McDonald's.
Right.
Gives a big shout out to garbage men and how it's, all of this middle class blue collar work is all honorable work because it moves forward the economy. And I think he just resonated to the point where, if they had made like Kamala Harris Person of the Year, I think Time magazine, like people would have just ripped it up, canceled their subscription.
And she was on the short list too. She was on the short list for Person of the Year. And yeah, you're right. Time magazine was pretty upset that she wouldn't do an interview with them. And one thing I think you have to remember, you mentioned, Trump went into CNN, and he went into anywhere that he was asked. And I think it was reported that he took advice from his son Barron, who watches all the YouTube shows and the Rumble shows and everything else. And so Trump went on all the YouTube shows. He went on all the podcasts. If someone asked him to come on, he showed up and did it. He went on Rogan, which was huge. I don't know why he'd say no to that. I still find it perplexing that Kamala Harris didn't go on that. It was reported that he actually was in talks with Call Her Daddy. He talked to her to see about coming on that show. Kamala Harris, that's one of the only podcasts that she did. But he went on everything. He made nice with all of the YouTubers and the influencers because he knows that that's where the voters are. Voters are walking around looking at content from everywhere. Who even has cable anymore? Like I don't have cable. Half the time, if I want to watch something on MSNBC, I have to wait for the clips to show up. Because I don't subscribe to it. I don't know how to get it. Cable package. I don't know. But Trump went where the people are, and Kamala Harris decided to stay in the ivory tower. And I think that was a huge mistake on her part. She also never really clarified her record, what she stood for based on what she had already done. And she didn't clarify what she really wanted to do going forward. When she was asked about abortion, which was a big issue for Democrats, she just kept saying that she supported Roe. Well, Roe is a Supreme Court decision, not a law. What law do you support? What do you support in terms of limitations? And she just kept saying she supported Roe. And Roe is what has given us across the country laws that have absolutely no limitations on abortion. When asked about that, she couldn't answer what she thought. It was like she didn't think anything without hearing it from her staffers after they did a round of polling. That's not something that you see with Trump. Trump goes out there, and probably half the time his staffers are like, "What? Why'd you say that?" And he's like, "Because I think it." And they're like, "Oh, okay, all right. Well, we'll write that down too." You know. So it's
Yeah.
a much different way. Like Kamala was clearly being handled, managed, where Trump directs what he's going to do. You could see that Trump was directing that campaign.
Yeah. And I wonder if they genuinely believed whoever spends the most money wins the election, because they spent, I think the last I read was 5 or 6 times as much money as President Trump. I mean, just over $1 billion in 100 days. And I still, to this day, being an intelligent podcaster that covers politics 7 days a week, I can't tell you what she stood for. I
No.
mean, there's still like no clarification. Meanwhile, Trump was so clear, even though he did this, long basket weave style interviews and rallies. You knew exactly what he stood for. I'm going to close the border. I'm going to drill. I'm going to make life more affordable. I want to bring insurance costs down, utility bills down. We're going to get rid of illegal immigrants. We're going to cut off their access to government taxpayer money. We're going to end the war. We're going to end the other war. We're going to avoid new war. Like, it was just so clear so, I saw Gladiator 2 last night at midnight, and one of the lines that stood out to me, it said, "Politics follows power." And I think people just looked at him and thought, he's going to make it safer. He's going to make life more affordable. He's going to get us out of wars. I think that there was such clarity on what he could bring, and it paid off. It paid off because he won.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And it is clear that he's the one in charge. He's the one driving this train, and he gets to decide who's on it, you know? Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. And it is interesting that you say that as a podcaster, you still can't say what Kamala Harris stood for. I bet, like me, every time she opened her mouth to say something, we're like, "Oh, maybe now she's going to say something worthwhile. Maybe now she's going to let us know what's up." And she'd open her mouth to say something, and nothing would come out. It would just be she'd do the word salad, she'd repeat herself, she'd just say things that were meaningless. My son had a joke during during the election, which was knock knock, who's there? Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris who? Oh, I'm sorry, we're not taking questions right now. And then later he replaced it with I grew up in a middle class family, because that's all you get. You get nothing, or you get platitudes and meaninglessness. It was really disappointing too, because this is a person who Joe Biden put into office and assured us all that she was super qualified and the right person for the job. Tried to say that it wasn't just because she was, diverse and checked off the right identity boxes. And it turns out that really she's just checking off the right identity boxes. There's a person you'd rather have Sunday dinner with, maybe, but like, I couldn't see her running the dog pound.
Yeah. She did clarify one thing, and it was to her disadvantage when she went on The View and they said, "Is there anything you would do different than President Biden?" And she said, "No, not that I can think of." And
Right.
that clearly broadcasts that, life's going to become more expensive, more illegal immigrants are going to come in, more of your hard-earned money is going to be shipped off to Ukraine. It's just Biden Biden 2.0. So anyway, I'm glad that she lost. Let me switch gears with you. What's your take on these drones, UFOs, mystery objects over New Jersey? My goodness, it's been almost 4 weeks. You're telling me no one in the United States can figure out what the heck is flying over New Jersey every single night?
Yeah, a balloon comes to mind from a couple of years ago when they told us that they didn't know what that was either. And then it turns out they knew what it was the whole time and they just weren't telling us anything. I think we're going to get some kind of revelation like that at some point with these drones. I was surprised to hear that they were the size of minivans, which I think is a little terrifying. Also, like, come on, like, tell us what's going on in New Jersey. I have no idea. Andy Kim was out there. He's isn't he senator-elect, I think, Andy Kim, from New Jersey. And he was out there trying to figure out what's going on, getting no answers. He's demanding answers for his state, which I respect. Even though he's a Democrat, I respect that. And yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea what's up with the drones. I'll read the reports about it and I'll be like, oh, I still don't know anything. Look at that. No
Yeah.
idea.
There,
Yeah.
so
They
there,
said it's not an Iranian mothership. That's what the
yeah,
White House said.
yeah.
Okay, okay. I mean, I
So
don't
there,
think Iran could get us a mothership over here right now with everything that they're dealing with, the collapse of Syria, their fight against, trying to eradicate Israel over there, what they're doing. So I don't know how they'd have that kind of deployment ready to go anyway.
yeah. Well, I just read right before we got on that they're now finding dozens of drones over a U.S. military base in Germany.
Oh,
They don't,
good.
yeah, they don't know where they are. I'm also reading that some people are saying that they're putting off some kind of a vapor. I'm also reading that many of them are spending disproportionate amounts of time around Bedminster, where Trump has a golf course. I just hope they're not like mapping something out, kind of like the Butler, Pennsylvania assassin.
Yeah.
They're mapping out everything so he knows exactly where to get on a roof and shoot at the man running for president. I don't know. It's so weird to me. The other thing that I read is people have photographed these. They then zoom in and they're like blurry light.
Yeah, what is up with that? I would love some answers on this. But yeah, I have no idea. I literally have no idea what's going on with that. There were reports also maybe a week or so ago that there were these drones around U.S. military bases in the U.K.
Yeah, yeah. Who
Yeah,
knows?
I mean, probably it's China and just like the balloon, and nobody wants to tell us that that's what's going on. And for some reason, they're not dealing with it in any kind of military way. Perhaps they don't want to let on what it looks like when they do a scramble over the East Coast. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, I think I
Yeah.
think you're on. I think you're onto something where it's like we don't know what these are to the public, and then behind the scenes they're like, "Oh crap, we know exactly what these are."
Right.
Yeah,
Right. I don't think it's aliens. I don't think it's Iran. But I do think that the federal government knows what's up. Of course,
yeah,
I don't think the federal government knows who's running it either. So
yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, this was disturbing to me. I know that you've followed this, but what do you think when you see a Supreme Court justice calling the blocking of gender affirming care, changing a child's gender, using medicines that alter their hormones, physically amputating body parts, and then compares that to blocking people from different races marrying each other? This was, of course, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who during her confirmation could not identify what a woman is. What do you think this is weird? Like, oh, not allowing a child to chop off its genitals is the same thing as blocking a Chinese man from marrying a Hawaiian woman.
Yeah, wasn't she just so out of line during those hearings? I too was really surprised when she brought up Loving, the case Loving, which was about basically eradicating uh, anti-interracial marriage laws, right? So she brought this up. She brought this up both in discussion with the Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar and also with the ACLU attorney Chase Strangio, who is also trans. And she brought it up to say that basically it's a civil rights issue, which is what the ACLU has been arguing. That this is and the DOJ, Biden DOJ, was arguing that this is a civil rights issue. And she brought this up to say that trying to prevent so-called trans children from getting sex change, medicalized sex change, drugs and surgeries is akin to preventing interracial marriage. And there's so many things about that argument that are on their face that are just absurd. One, when you get married, you're an adult. These are children. Children are not allowed to get married either, for a very good reason. They cannot properly consent to marriage. There are age of consent laws all across the country. Children are not allowed to get tattoos or drink or smoke or sign up for the army. You're not allowed to do any of that stuff. You're not allowed to run away from home. You're not allowed to live on your own, right? All of these things you're not allowed to do. And so I thought that her argument was flawed in that sense. But I also thought that her argument showed a deeper problem, and that problem was with her thinking itself. She is perhaps not able to look at this issue without putting a racial lens on it. And that's something we've seen in other arguments as well. She puts racial arguments on a lot of stuff, and I think that that has to do with being really steeped in critical race theory. And what critical race theory does is it says, look at everything through the lens of race and racism. And if you don't immediately see race or racism in what it is that you're looking at, find it because it's there. And that's what she was doing with this. She was looking for race and racism in a law that is about protecting children from medical mutilation and harm. And so she found it. Because if you look for it, you're going to make it up, even if it's not actually there. I found that very disappointing. And I do hope that the Tennessee law is allowed to stand. But I also thought, so Tennessee was arguing that they have the right to ban this procedure. And I think that they do have the right to ban that procedure. And they were leaning into the Dobbs argument, saying, these kinds of things are states' rights issues. And I get that, but I do think that this needs to be a federal issue and that this should be something that's banned on a federal level. This is a horrific practice. And we're only just now seeing the tip of the iceberg with the harm that has been done to children as a result of this. There's a doctor in California, Dr. Joanna Olson Kennedy, and she runs the child gender clinic at Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, right? She runs that. This is a woman who has had thousands of patients come through. She is opposed to what she calls gatekeeping, which is preventing children from accessing sex change medicine by saying that they need extra letters or that they need to live as the chosen sex for at least a certain period of time, or saying that they need to have mental health counseling for a certain period of time before they're given access to these drugs and surgeries. She just thinks that they should get to have it right away. And so that's what she does. She funnels people through. And there's a young woman who was a patient of Dr. Olson Kennedy's. She's now in her 20s. She's a drama student at UCLA. She has an Adam's apple, which she finds distressing. She has a lower voice, and she has no breasts. She began her sex change with Olson Kennedy at the age of 12. She was put on puberty blockers, so she also has bone density problems because puberty blockers are a big problem for bone density. When you go through puberty, you get strong bones. If you don't go through puberty, you're not going to get strong bones. And she's suffering from that now. She, by the age of 14, she was on testosterone. Her breasts had been removed. She had been pushed onto this alternate puberty, male puberty, which makes no sense for a woman's body and causes all kinds of problems. Testosterone causes all kinds of problems for a 14-year-old girl's body. It can push you into early menopause. It can cause uterine and vaginal atrophy, which are remarkably painful. And this is a loss of sexual function. And this is also, can lead to infertility. No girl at the age of 12, 13, or 14 can say, honestly, I know for sure I never want to have children. I know for sure I never want to live as a woman. I know for sure that I never want to have a gratifying sexual experience. You can't say that at those ages. I question that you can ever say that, but that's me. I'm a grown woman and I understand different things. And this woman is being sued. Olson Kennedy is now being sued. There's a suit that was let to go forward in, I think it was North Carolina by Prisha Mosley, who also underwent gender transition and is now out the other side. Chloe Cole is out there speaking widely to anyone who will listen, not just warning kids, but warning parents, hey, you want to be good parents. So you go along with this stuff because you think that's the right thing to do. It's not. The right thing to do is to put your foot down. And I think Ketanji Brown Jackson had it entirely backwards when she tried to make this a civil rights issue. It's not a civil rights issue, it's a medical mutilation issue. And it's one that needs to be completely stopped. One of the big problems, and one of the things that both the Solicitor General and the ACLU leaned into, is the Bostock case, which you might remember from, I think it was decided in 2020, in June 2020, I think that came down. And this decision said that it was discrimination on the basis of sex to say that a man cannot wear women's clothes to work and cannot use the women's washroom at work. Because it said that because you would not prevent women from wearing women's clothes and using the women's washroom, it is discriminatory to say that you would not let men wear women's clothes and use the women's washroom. This was a ridiculous decision when it came down. It was absolutely absurd. It was clear that it was going to be used for all kinds of horrible things, and it has been for that. The Biden administration has based their changes to Title IX on Bostock, and the Biden administration has based the executive orders that he signed on the very first day in office to force all of the federal agencies to be more trans inclusive. That too was based on the Bostock decision. And that's a decision that was referenced by the ACLU and the DOJ in this case.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah. Dr. Jordan Peterson talks about how, kids have these imaginations, they try on different things, but if you just, took a snapshot in time, are they going to have that same desire down the road? So I think of my nephew right now. The last 5 times I've seen him, he's in a Ghostbusters costume.
That's amazing.
Well, it's almost Christmas. It's not Halloween anymore. Every time on the family group chat, there's a photo, even if he's in the background, he's wearing a Ghostbusters outfit. So does he believe he's a Ghostbuster? Maybe. He's like 9 years old. So that, like this person out in California that's being sued, this 12-year-old girl is like, hey, I don't think I am who I am. Okay, we'll just completely change your entire life as a 12-year-old who has no life experience, hasn't even finished junior high, just barely came out of elementary school. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, and it's wild too, because what Olson Kennedy and people like her say is that child sex changes, or what they call gender affirmation, they even call genital surgery for minors, they call it gender confirmation surgery, which is absolutely insane. But what they mean by life-saving, they mean 2 things. One, they mean if you don't let your child do this, your child is going to kill themselves. And in the case of this young woman, Clementine Breen at UCLA, Olson Kennedy told her parents that she was going to kill herself, even though Breen says that that was never on her mind. She was never suicidal. So that's one thing that they mean by life-saving. But here's the other thing they mean by life-saving, which is really totally insane. What they mean by life-saving is that if a child goes on puberty blockers and then cross-sex hormones and develops the secondary sex characteristics of the opposite sex, they will appear more like the opposite sex, right? So for girls, that means body hair, lower voice. It means Adam's apple. It means, once they do the surgery, it means no breasts. For boys, it means a much more feminized chest with the estrogen. It means stunted growth so that they're not, 7-foot tall woman out there. And it means, a softening of the jawline. What they mean by life-saving is that once the child grows up with the appearance of the opposite sex, it will be easier for them in adulthood to pass as the opposite sex, thereby preventing them from having to undergo more surgeries as adults to make these physical constructive changes to their bodies. That's what they mean by life-saving. It's entirely about appearance. They're talking about appearance. Your life will be saved because your appearance will be different than it is now. Your appearance will be the one you wished for right now. We are isolating your wish at 12 years old. We are making it a reality by the time you're 20. And then there's nothing you can do about it. That's what they mean by life-saving, which is I don't know about you, but my life is not saved by my appearance. You know, like that's not what I need to save my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of sexual dysfunction, I want to skip to the United Healthcare killer,
Mhm.
Luigi Mangione. I don't know if I'm saying his last name correctly or not. What are your thoughts on this story? I mean, my week was going along. It was great. The news cycle was a little quiet, and the next thing I know, there's a manhunt in New York City. I'm thinking they're never going to catch this guy, and then they catch him, at a McDonald's 286 miles away, or some crazy thing like that. What is your take on all of that?
Yeah, it's a real tragedy. This man showed up in New York with I guess, a head full of revenge and perhaps some psychedelic drugs as well, with a lot of back pain, and decided to murder the CEO of a health company that he's not even a member of that health company. So I don't know why he got it into his head to do that, except that maybe I don't know. I mean, what a horrible, horrible thing. And now you have two grieving children and a widow right before Christmas. But what was really crazy about that was that there did appear to be some support from Mangione after that. And you saw it on, what was it? Jimmy Kimmel was talking about how his producers and staff all thought he was really super cute. You know, it was just great. And you had AOC saying, what was it, today or yesterday? She was saying that the denial of claims is seen as violence by
Yes.
some people. You had Elizabeth Warren, everybody who's come out to try and say that in some way this was justified, always backs it up with it's not justified, and then goes on to, try to justify it. And that is a really dangerous thing. This is political violence against a wealthy man who got in this other wealthy man's way, I guess, because Mangione came from a really prosperous family in Maryland. Yeah, it's absolutely terrible. And I really hope that the idea of this kid as some kind of folk hero completely dissipates, because it's not a rational view.
Yeah, it several things have caught me off guard. Like you say, so he has this back injury from surfing in Hawaii. Now you've got
Mhm.
people saying, sexually he couldn't function. He's a 26-year-old male with all this pent up energy. Um, he's highly educated, high IQ, comes from money. What drives somebody to print a ghost gun and kill somebody else? On the flip side, you've got all these people saying, oh my gosh, this guy had it coming. They deny claims. Insurance is so expensive. My Obamacare isn't what I thought it would be. The mixed messaging has been very interesting to try to wrap my head around.
Yeah, me too. And the thing is insurance great? No, insurance is not great. We've all had probably the experience of having different claims denied, or having to pay out of pocket for this or that, or being surprised when your copay doesn't cover the whole thing or whatever it is. But that's certainly not a reason to go gun someone down. And I think that people are aware of what the problems are with health insurance companies, and the cost of health insurance is really skyrocketing in the US. It has been for years. We know that. I think it's what, like, um, healthcare in the US is like 19% of GDP. Almost 30% of that is private healthcare premiums. So it is a lot. But we in America put a high value on medical health. We put a high value on taking care of people, even when it seems like we don't. We definitely put a higher value on it than places like Canada, where people will wait in hallways for weeks, to try and get seen. And where now 1 in 20 deaths in Canada, I was just reading about this morning, is actually from government sponsored suicide. And I certainly hope that that's not something that we would prefer, and in some cases in Canada, this is like keeping healthcare costs down. I don't think that's ever worth it. I think that we want to have a country where we have a lot of research going on, a lot of medical research, which we do have. There's a lot of money put into medical research. That has something to do with the higher premiums. There's a lot of money put into medical schools and training doctors. Doctors are, when you get a student loan for medical school, that's not a government student loan. You have to get a private loan, which means that when you come out of med school, you want to charge a lot of money because you got to pay off your loans to Citibank. So that's a thing, and there's a lot of issues with it. But I also think that there are plenty of issues with socialized or single payer systems that I don't think any Americans would want. What Americans get mad about with their healthcare is that we all want the absolute best possible care for ourselves and for the people that we love all of the time. We want that all of the time. We think it's our right to get the absolute best health care for all of us all of the time. It's not possible to do that, and that's too bad. But we have a better shot of that than in the UK, or where they can tell you your son can't get this life-saving treatment because we don't think he'll survive it afterwards, so you don't get to have it. You're not going to get that in Canada or the UK or in places where they do have these socialized kinds of programs. So yeah, is our health insurance system flawed? Is healthcare super expensive? Yes to both of those things, but I don't think any of us would wish the alternative on anyone that we love or care about.
Yeah. No, I've talked to people in other countries, and they say, "Oh yeah, I had to wait, 9 months to get an MRI." Meanwhile, they're in pain. Where here, if your insurance doesn't want to cover it, like, you just call the place, "Hey, I'm not coming in with insurance. Oh, that $5,000 MRI, it's actually $499. You can pay out of pocket." I've had to do
Right.
that. I had to get rid of traditional insurance. Now I'm on a Christian cost sharing program that has saved me quite a bit of money. I just thought of a talking point that Republicans need to look into. They should say something when they go after Obamacare again in the future. They should say, President Obama promised you could keep your doctor, and that was a lie. He also said it would be affordable, and now that's a lie. And then
Both of those things are not true.
explain the free market and how it would actually make insurance less expensive. But you can keep your doctor, you can keep it affordable. Oh wait, those were both a lie, because it's no longer the Affordable Care Act. They should lean into Obamacare so that they don't have to lie to us using the word affordable anymore.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the thing too with Obamacare, I remember when it was rolled out, and if you couldn't afford a premium in the marketplace and your company didn't offer insurance and you couldn't get insurance, therefore you were charged $1,500 at tax time for the privilege of nothing, right? You couldn't afford insurance. This happened to me one year. Couldn't afford insurance, didn't have it through work, got stuck paying $1,500. I also didn't have $1,500, right? I was an artist in New York. I didn't have any of that. I had, basically my rent payment and some pizza. That's what I had. So yeah, I think that plan was really bad. That thing where you were penalizing people who already didn't have the money to, you know, it was a punishment. And I thought that was so rude.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's sad though when the punishment is cheaper than having the actual health
Right.
insurance, right?
Which it was.
Kind of like insider trading among members of Congress. The fine is cheaper than the gains they can get by just trading based on inside information. But that's a whole different show. Libby, I want to thank you for coming on. I always enjoy speaking with you. If people want to follow you online, what's the best way to do that?
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter at Libby Emmons. You can check out everything that we're doing at thepostmillennial.com and humanevents.com. And if you want to hear from me every day, you can subscribe to my newsletter, which is thepostmillennial.com/Libby.
Okay. I will put those direct links down below. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much, Stephen. You too.